Okay, looks like we are going. Let's put this back in here. We are definitely not in the right place. Let's see. Cool. Seem to be going. Let me let my friends know. For those that care. Share. Copy link. Okay, cool. I think we are good to go. Okay, except I was not holding my cyclic. What up? Saved it. Cool. My laptop's still on my lap. Let me get rid of that so we don't die here. Let's see, I'm way too tall right now. We'll get down some, we'll get back some. Sick. Perfect. Okay, cool. Another swig of the energy drink and off we go. Welcome back to Sunday Flying with Matt. Does that mean anything? No, it doesn't. It means it's Sunday, and that's 2 days until Flight Sim 2024 comes out. Which means I'm ready for it. I'm damn ready for it. But also I'm going to turn off these labels here. Traffic nameplates off. Hopefully that will help it out some. A lot of people flying out on the West Coast today, especially probably up there towards LAX. But yeah, welcome back to VR Helicopter Debauchery with Matt. It's really just trying to do an easy flight today, you know, nothing. Yeah, nothing special. I was just checking my audio there on secondary stream setup. Yeah, nothing too special. Killing time. I have a 3D printer I just set up, so it's running through its motions, getting set up and doing a first print making parts for it. What else? Oh, I was just flying over in Washington, D.C., which was really lagging. My GTs are high. Why? Yeah, I was just flying over in the Washington, D.C. area. Saw another dude out there flying. He was in the Gumbali Capri. I think it's the G2, which is one of the helicopters that's native on Microsoft 2020. Added him as a friend. He was flying around doing some pretty cool guy shit. Kind of the motions and moves that you would see the the BO 105 doing with the Red Bull people. Look at everybody out there. Goodness. Yeah, for some reason in this game, the G2 just feels like it has a lot of ass behind it, where you can be in a hover, add full collective, and then do the backflip almost, because he did one of those, and I've noticed that you could do that. I don't think those have that much power in real life, but what do I know? I haven't flown one of those in real life. Yeah, he was doing some cool little aerobatic things, so it was neat to see somebody else flying helicopters. There's a few other people that I see on here relatively regularly flying rotorcraft. But, yeah, it's always nice to see, because I've probably mentioned it before, but I feel like fixed-wing stuff is so boring. As far as commercial, flying at least. I feel like fixed-wing stuff is just about as dull as it gets when it gets to commercial level. Because you're a bus driver, you're a taxi driver. There are different levels of helicopter stuff where you are just a taxi driver. Or an Uber X, Uber XL. Which is cool, everybody has their own thing. Everybody has their own thing that they like to do. But, I'd much rather be fully involved with cyclics and collectives and anti-torque pedals and have something to do the entire time. But I'm not really just doing a 1.5 hour flight just to practice straighten levels. I kind of want to do some touchdowns in different places and identify LZs and come into those, like we're going to hit this field here. We're not going to do a recon pass because power lines don't exist in this world, even though the 1 RPM, get down. Yeah, power lines don't really exist in this world, but power poles do. So I'm just going to make sure not to hit any of those. Yeah, we're going to come over here and do a quick land, and I'll turn on the names again for a bit to see if he's popped up, because I told him I was going to be flying over in this area. Keeping our descents nice and slow. Let's see, let's add our, where'd my controller go? Here we go. General options, traffic. And back up we go. I'm gonna go this way because there's less buildings to clear. Does it matter? In the game, no. In real life, there'd probably be power lines in this direction, but once again, we don't have to worry about those. Yeah, see, I feel like that's LAX up there. I feel like that's a lot of people for one little area, which it's nice that the game's letting me know about people that are that far away, but also, man, I can feel a difference in the performance. I'm not sure if you guys can see it either. It's also probably a bit since I am flying low level and it's having to render all of these buildings and stuff too. Let's see. Do I see the guy over there? I don't think so. It's kind of hard to tell. So yeah, we're going to keep on moving north and work the way up the coast. But just for my own sanity, we're going to level off real quick and turn those names off. I wish there was a distance that we could change for that, like a 10-mile distance or something. I don't want to see everything up in in LAX. That's a bit extreme. Okay, let's throw some speed back in this bad boy and go. Funny enough, the Hueys, the Chinooks, the Blackhawks, all these giant helicopters, they are actually quick. You would think some of the smaller stuff would be the faster stuff, you know? I mean, the MD-500 is quick. MD-500 is like the little Ferrari or the Lotus or something, some sort of small fast car. I think Lotus because I think it's small and maneuverable, while some of these big, high horsepower Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Koenigsegg's, Bugattis, whatever, you know, they're more of a straight line speed sort of thing. But I feel like the MD-500, even though it can do the straight line speed, I feel like it's also a very, very nimble helicopter with places it can get in and out of, and its overall rotor diameter, it's able to really hit some confined areas pretty effectively. Which I wish I knew more about the varieties of rotor diameter with those, but I'm sure that in the 500, the 520, the 600 may be bigger though. I think the 500, the 520, the 530, and the older Hughes 369, I think they're all kind of the same. Or at least as far as rotor diameter is considered. Yeah, those can get into some really small places. They're really quick. Most of those are 5-blade main rotors. There was actually a model of the 500 or the 530 that came with 2 tail rotors, which that's wild to think of. I mean, usually it's a single tail rotor. You look at like the 500N or the 600N or their 900 series Explorers with the Notar. It's either a single tail rotor, there's no tail rotor, but they did a dual tail rotor setup on the MD. Whichever model it was a quiet kit. That was from, I don't know if it was MD that offered it, it might have been a military contract bid sort of thing, but it was to have a quieter exterior noise signature from the MDs, which obviously it's a pretty big thing when you're doing military operations. But I don't think they were allowed to get into the enclosed tail rotor. I think that was at the time maybe patented or whatever by Airbus or Eurocopter at the time. But I don't see why they just didn't do that unless it didn't fit with the overall profile or what they were trying to do, because I do know the enclosed tail rotor does lose a bit of a tail rotor authority. Cool, let's come over here to these buildings that are right behind the A-pillar there. These bigger fields over here. I am full right pedal right now. We're still going pretty fast, so I'm fighting all of the vertical stabilizer doing its thing. I mean, I know it's not the way you're supposed to come in, but man, it looks really cool when you see a helicopter kind of drifting its way in. Let's hit this dark patch of grass up here. That's going to be our touchdown area. But man, when you see something... What was that? Was that a disconnected? We're reconnecting. Hold on a second. Cool. Don't know where I lost you guys. But we're back. But like I'll say again, the sliding into places with a helicopter in your approach is pretty damn cool in my opinion. It's not the correct way to do things because you want to have the stabilization from moving forward through the air with the vertical, and you also want to be moving, especially when you're closer to the ground, you want to be moving parallel, the same direction of travel as the overall motion of the helicopter, because that helps with emergency landings. If you were to lose all power and you were to come down for a landing, you want to be moving in the same direction as what your skids would allow you to slide. So that's kind of a safety thing. So when you see people taxiing around, you rarely see them taxi sideways or in an angle or askew to the direction that they would be usually going. And that's just for safety wherever there was a loss of engine. or loss of power or something, you could immediately set it down and just kind of slide to a stop. But it doesn't look cool. It does not look cool. It all comes down to what your employer's SOP of everything is also, you know, a lot of medical helicopter companies have rules where you have to have a twin-engine helicopter. For example, a lot of the children's healthcare stuff or offshore stuff, they want you to have a second engine for safety. And sometimes the different places that you land do, just because they're confined areas or it's in a populated area, and it's a liability to have helicopters that can't get out of the way and they need to, trying to land in places that are a bit more dangerous. Or I know a big thing, ADAC overseas, the yellow helicopters that you see the TV shows on for different levels of medical evacs and stuff over in like the UK, and ADAC's probably even in Australia too, or either they just have yellow ones also. But the thing for them is, a lot of times when they land in a place, they want to land and touch down in the same direction that they made their approach. And when they leave, they will back out of their parking place, for lack of better terms, because it's a known good area. The helicopter can fit that way, so that's the way that they're going to come in and that they're going to leave. And also, if something happens to fail, they can go directly back into a spot that they know is good. So let's say, for instance, let's touch down real quick. Let's find somewhere that's shittier to land. Let's come in between this brown building here on our left. I'm going to do a shitty approach also, but let's say this is the safe direction to come into here in between these buildings. Let's say there's something in front, and this is just a smarter approach. We have enough power to get out vertically and go over it, but let's just say this is our approach. So we're going to come in here, and we know it's safe, the direction that we're coming in. And this is a high skid model. Okay, so we touch down. Now to leave, we get up and we leave, and if we're going this way, if we have an engine failure, let's say there's a whole bunch of houses beyond us here, then there's nowhere for us to put down. Especially with the two-engine model, you know, like, okay, cool, you want to land immediately, you don't want to try to keep going. But when you're backing out, let's say I have a failure of engine 1 or engine 2, I'm able to say, okay, cool, I can come back in and land somewhere and take a nice approach in from the direction that I knew I was supposed to go in. And that's just an operating procedure that you get with a lot of places. A single engine, I don't know how much they push for that, because if you... A thing for helicopters, if you don't know, is the transitional lift that you get. Helicopters, although people say that you're beating the air into submission, once you get forward movement going, it is the entire rotor itself acts as a giant wing. So when you're moving forward, your rotor system is your wing, and that usually happens 20 to 30 knots, depending on the helicopter, depending on how it's designed or whatever. So I would think with a single engine helicopter, they probably want you to turn around and make it all a forward momentum, forward motion thing, just that way you're not worried about having any issues. Because if you were to lose an engine while backing out, you don't have any transitional lift that's kind of keeping you afloat. I mean, hell, if you look at a lot of smaller helicopters like or piston underpowered ones like the Robinson and the Hughes, like 300 or 269 CBIs. Something with them is you want to have the forward motion, so that way you can get as much transitional lift as you can and then hit your max climb rate to immediately get to 500 foot above ground level as quick as you possibly can. And part of that is for auto rotation safety. If you're not going at a good speed and you're in a extremely out of ground effect hover, wherever you're hovering up here, if you were to lose your engine power and you were to be sitting still, it would take a lot more effort to either get back or to try to catch and maintain the momentum of your rotor system. So especially with Robinsons and stuff like that, it's really taught where you try to keep your hover and your initial run up on the runway, taxiway, wherever you're taking off from, you're trying to keep that 5 to 10 feet off the ground, and you're doing that as long as you can until you're reaching 50 or 60 knots. Once you hit the 50 or 60 knots, you're pulling up and you're trying to get to the 500 foot above ground level as quick as you can. And the big reason for that is at 500 feet or at 50 or 60 knots, or really 50, 60 knots, it's easier to tilt back, lower your collective, and regather that energy in the rotor system. Or if you're at 500 feet, even if you're going slower, it gives you enough time to catch that if you don't have enough forward airspeed to make to transition. Either way, if you don't understand what I'm saying, ask in the comments, and I'll explain the best that I can. Also, I am not a helicopter pilot. I aspire to be one. Let's come over here and land and do a look around real quick with names turned on. Let's see if I have any other helicopters in the area that I can go bother and harass. What's a good landing area with a point of view? Let's come down here and land next to the water. Ooh, let's land next to the beach. How pretty. I feel like if you have a official enough looking helicopter, you can almost do and get away with whatever you want to. I know that's not the rules, but if you have a medical helicopter, you kind of have a pass to land wherever you want to, as long as you're not hurting anything else, and as long as you're getting a patient picked up. Don't want to get into the sand, because in real life, sand just destroys engines. One thing you'll see that I'm doing right now, I'm trying to keep my vertical descent slower than 300 feet per minute, and that keeps me out of a vortex ring state, which is basically Drop Like a Rock Simulator 2024. We don't want that. Let's see. Resume. Shit, I don't want to resume. General options, traffic. Turn you guys on back for a second. Apply and save. Go back. Don't see a Capri. Or any helicopter for that matter. And really I look for the Capris and the 407s for the most part, because those are the helicopters that are native. I don't expect people to spend money downloading all of the different models that I have, which that's another thing I'm looking forward to in 2024. Disconnected, but I think y'all can already hear me again by now. Reconnected. Cool. And up we go. But yeah, whenever I'm looking for other helicopters to fly with, usually, I mean, you'll be able to see if somebody's in a 500E or Huey, or because it will say UH-1 or H-145 if you download the Hype Group one, which I haven't streamed with that one yet because it's a very detailed model, and it's a very intensive model if you ask me, which I do enjoy flying it. It has missions that you can use, and then it's downloaded, which I really, really enjoy. So I'll be excited to see flights in 2024 have that just existing already. Let's get a little bit more altitude. We're still a little bit laggy. Whoa! Look at the size of this damn truck. That is bigger than 53 foot, son. I know California sure as shit ain't letting you do that. Is that just 2 trucks that happen to spawn? And yep. Okay. Okay, I see you, bud. We're watching you. Let's not run into all these guys. You're going 70 knots there, buddy. It's kind of fast for a truck. Of course, that's airspeed. I don't know what my ground speed is. Let's see, do I have a ground speed reading anywhere here? Not that I can see immediately. What was I doing? Oh yeah, we were getting more altitude. Full collective. Let's throw some torque at this. Yeah, 2024 comes out in 2 days, despite it being 2024 for 10 months, 11 months now. But very much looking forward to that. Thank you, Energy Drinks, for bringing me today. And it's neat to see when this one out here came out in 2020. I wasn't in the flight sim community at all. I wasn't watching Microsoft. I wasn't watching X-Plane. I wasn't watching any of the studios talk about releasing any sort of simulators. But these were pretty popular when they first came out, and it was really neat to see a whole bunch of people who hadn't played get onto it. I mean, it's even people that don't have an interest in aviation in general were getting interested and posting videos and streaming, doing stuff, and it was really neat to see. Not so much because it's just cool to see people out there doing it, but because it was such a well-made, put together product that people of any skill level could pick it up in whatever capacity that they were looking to pick it up in. Whether you were somebody who picks it up at first like I did, where I did it with a gaming controller through a laptop that could barely run the lowest graphics, I probably did 10 hours, maybe, doing that before I just didn't feel like running the super low graphics on my laptop anymore. And then I sat owning this game for 3 years, if not 4 years, until I touched it again here recently. And the only reason I downloaded it here recently is because I have decided I want to be a helicopter pilot in real life. And I wanted to get a lot of decent, but not... Look how different the water looks through the tint of the top windows there. That's cool. That's a good detail I didn't even notice. Very neat. But yeah, I want to be a real helicopter pilot, and I don't have any assumption that flying a simulator is going to make me an expert in any way, shape, or form. But I do feel like I am getting some good mental practice of feeling it out and feeling how, or learning the relationship between cyclic and collective, and how the pedals work, where when I add a whole bunch of collective for instance, slow down a little bit and see if we can get it to do something goofy for us. Let's get down to like 40. Okay, so here I've got my pedals pretty much even. When I add full collective and I'm keeping aim forward, you see how much to the right it turned. And that's because the rotors are going one way and the body of the helicopter wants to torque the other way because of just... I mean, like, if your house wasn't secured down, technically your ceiling fan would put the same force on your ceiling, and it's just doing the same thing here with a much bigger ceiling fan. So yeah, that's what your pedals are for, and learning that, especially when on takeoff, when you're just getting off the ground, knowing you need to have a little bit more left pedal or a little bit more right pedal. It's something that you have to feel for, they have to look for. If you see the nose of the helicopter twisting a little bit one way or the other, you know, some helicopters have a whole bunch of tail rotor authority, some helicopters don't. And that's not just something that I feel from the sim, it's something that I've heard a lot of other people talk about. and you lose tail rotor authority in different situations, you know, depending on how you're looking into the wind, depending on the weight, depending on your altitude. A lot of different factors with it, and of course there could be a failure of the tail rotor system. But understanding that is, and the relationship between everything is a big thing into learning how to fly. That's what takes the longest for a lot of people, from a function or actually piloting standpoint, not so much the learning the rules, learning the nomenclature and everything, but the actual flying itself is getting the mental pathway built for using the pedals and using the cyclic and using the collective and having them all have their relationship with each other. But once you have that down, you know, you're pretty well set. Then it's making sure that you know that you're doing all your ATC call-outs right, that when you're running, especially like a piston helicopter, that you're running your fuel mixture. Make sure you're running that appropriately so you're not going to lean out the engine, or you're not burning unnecessary fuel when you don't have to on something like this, watching your N1, your N2, and how everything's working together, your turbine outlet temperatures. Yeah, there's a lot of things you have to learn on top of it, and I feel like that's something that you can't overlook, especially for me, stating that I want to be a helicopter pilot. Can I reach over here and zoom out on the other one? Let me see. Is that a zoom button? Yeah. I'm still way south. We're not even Orange County yet. That's why it's so sparse. I'm in that gap of no man's land between Orange County and San Diego now, where it's kind of nice California, a good lack of homeless population. But let's get our speed up. We don't want to do 100 knots through here. We want to get back to the hills and the mountains up here. That's an airplane headed right for me. What up, bud? Wingtip position lights. Good to know. That way you know which direction the airplane's heading. If you can see one color, you know you're looking at the left or the right side. If you can see both colors, you can tell if it's headed towards or away from you. Which, now that we're here, I'm going to... Actually, I'm going to set down over here. To the beach airport. I don't know what the runway directions or numbers is. We've got some airspeed right there. It just feels like nothing being in this field. Let's see. Camp Pendleton Beach Airport. I wonder if they only do helicopter stuff here, if that's I need to look more into that just in my personal time, because it's interesting that there's no marked runway. But it's Pendleton. I don't think they'll mind a Huey setting down. I'm one of you, it's okay. Looks like that plane's turned a different direction. I believe, or else I'm just seeing something further out. Okay, let's see. Escape, general, and traffic. I'm dead again, 353. What up, bud? Lake Truth YouTube. I want to say I saw you over in DC earlier. Pretty sure. The PC-6 Pilatus. Very cool plane in real life. They look kind of silly with a huge nose, but man, they have a lot of power to be doing cargo stuff and a bit more like remote runway operations. Very neat to see. Enjoy your flight. I'm dead again. 353. It's probably just I'm dead again. I don't know what the sub numbers are after it. Gonna set down again. Turn this off from a safe location. Let's see. General options, traffic. But even starting my departure like that, where I'm kind of turning as I'm going forward, is technically not good. You want to keep your speed moving up as you're low, and then once you hit a speed that you can safely auto-rotate if necessary, that's when you pull back and you add some altitude into it. But I do enjoy seeing other people flying around, you know, it's especially when they have their live view on where you can see other people flying around you. It's just neat to see other people that are, whether you're just gamers or you're an aviation enthusiast in general, it's a cool thing to see and a cool thing to kind of be a part of. I'll turn this volume down a little bit. Let's see, where's my volume buttons? Over here. There we go. Yeah, just having different aviation enthusiasts in general. You know, it's just a cool thing, especially if you can find somebody who's flying a similar platform to what you are. Like whenever I see a helicopter person, I always try to airport hop until I get to them through the main menu or find them somehow. Or there's been times in Los Angeles when I fly around to go hit the I want to say the Maze Bank, but that's the Grand Theft Auto name for it. But the I think it's the U.S. Bank Tower that's in downtown Los Angeles, has the heliport on top, which I mean most places in Los Angeles have a heliport, but a helipad of some sort. And that's just like a city regulation where any building over a certain height has to have one for whatever reason. Who knows? It'd be an interesting thing to do a little video, informational short video essay for the channel. Why Los Angeles is the most helicopter-friendly city in the U.S. That'd be neat. I would watch that. So I'll work on writing a script up for that one. Yeah, it's neat. Like I saw a guy out there. I want to say I was in the Bell 407. Because if I see somebody, let's say I'm flying, usually I'm around Atlanta because I'm a local to Georgia. Usually if I'm flying around somewhere there, I'm doing one of these downloaded helicopters that I just heard my dog run into the door trying to get in here. Usually I use one of the downloaded helicopters just because the models are a bit better. They tend to fly a bit more accurately to a real helicopter, I assume, or I've been told. And like the 407 and the Capri seem very soft and very muted controls, and they don't seem that hard to fly versus something like the 206 from Fly Inside, or like the Robinson R22 from Cowan Sim. This Huey even is very picky on some things. That's from Taug's Hangar, T-A-O-G, Taug, T-A-O-G, T-O-A-G. Either way, it's they're all very unique flying characteristics, where the 407 just feels like a powerful G2, and the G2 feels like a powerful 407. Some people do their own flight models from scratch, like the Fly Inside. Some people do the 206, like the 206 from Fly Inside. Or some people just take the factory flight models from the 407 and tweak the inputs and power levels and tell rotor authority or whatever. Either way, the ones from Microsoft just seem muted, and they don't seem right, in my opinion. They just seem too soft. They seem too arcadey, which is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something more accurate. But if I see somebody else flying around in a 407, I want to go fly over there in a 407, or I want to go fly over there in the G2. Because that way they can see the model that I'm flying, so that way they know, hey, look at somebody else flying a helicopter. And also, if they're doing something unique or hard or whatever, I want to be able to try to match whatever they're doing in the same platform that they have. I think that's Catalina Island out there. So like with the G2, for instance, being an underpowered piston helicopter, you're not going to get a lot of ability to climb up a mountainside, perhaps, or to maintain a good vertical speed for a longer distance. You're not able to, and if it was a more accurate model, you wouldn't be able to do a lot of confined area landings and takeoffs just because you're lacking the power. Like whenever I fly the G2 and I'm actually trying to get some practice, and I overload or overweight it pretty heavily just because I want to be able to struggle and to fight whichever way I need to make it work. And here I'm not gonna say pull up at the last moment for this, but I want to do a quicker ascent, so sort of right here around max cruise speed. I don't want to get any faster than this. But yeah, so I want to challenge him. I see somebody with a 407 like I did a while back at the US Bank Tower. You know, I spawn in a 407 and I fly over there, and it was cool because we were both taking turns doing approaches and watching each other land on top of it. Then we'd land, sit there for a few seconds and hit a hover and take off, and then circle around and watch the other person do it. It was just neat because it was a shared enthusiasm, or just having fun, or a mutual appreciation of somebody else taking the time to learn how to fly. What a cool little reveal right there over the hill. That's one reason why I like flying low, especially in the game where there's no FAA to tell you not to do something. But you can also do like a side reveal, which we already know what it looks like over there. But it's nice to have other people who have taken the time to learn how to handle and fly a helicopter, which I've also never done this from like a HOTAS setup, the HOTAS, or like a joystick and like airplane throttle and airplane pedals that most people have when they start getting into Flight Simulator. I've played on a controller when I first got the game, and that was flying a few fixed wing things back when I first got it. You know, like, ooh, cool, look, I'm in the jet, or oh, look, I'm in the Cirrus. I think mostly I did like the Icon A5 because I like the water landings wherever I wanted to. But with that said, once I put the game down, you know, I never really played again. I remember why I didn't play it again now. It was the downloads, all 6 trillion gigabytes of stuff that I had to load for every single update, and it just, my laptop did not have the room. I actually deleted it off the laptop so that way I would have room for video editing, for other stuff, and like for starting this channel, and other things like that. I just didn't have the room with Flight Sim on there, so I built a computer just for this. Yeah, for somebody else to take the time, like I specifically bought helicopter controls for this. If you look up, I think it's Apache Simulator or Apache Simulations. I got their R44 set up, so it's a Robinson R22, R44, R66 style control, which probably most like the 44, which is why they call it that. But I got that style because I wanted to be used to the feel of this, because the helicopter I'll probably do a majority of my training in when I'm getting my license will be a Robinson R22. and I want to be used to having the top-down stick, where it doesn't even look like this for what I've got. But yeah, so like I bought this for a practical reason of, yeah, sure, I enjoy coming down here and flying. No, I've only streamed a few hours of doing this, but I probably have right now around 140 hours where it's logged, and there's probably a good 10 to 15 hours where it's not logged, because when I'm using the Hype H145, I don't know if it's just a lack of RAM. I've got a good bit of RAM in the computer, and everything's should be able to run it, but it might just not be friendly with other things that I have loaded. But every once in a while I'll get a crash, and then it doesn't log the entire flight. And not a crash as in me crashing it, but a crash as in whenever I'm using the iPad that's mounted to the side of the glare shield here, I can almost replicate it. It's where if my engines are in the process of moving from idle to run or to flight power, and then I'm trying to do something on the iPad at the same time, I usually get a crash. Or it's much better like to be in the air, which makes it much harder to do, but I seem to be less likely to get a system crash or a game crash whenever I'm actually flying and moving around. So, where was I going with this? But yeah, I've probably got 10 to 15 hours in the 145. We're going to land up here on top of this hill somewhere. But yeah, I've got 10 to 15 hours in that 145. Ooh, lagging. And it just doesn't log because of whatever reason the game crashes for. Whatever reason, but we'll say 150 hours. Total 140 hours-ish of rotocraft. There's like maybe an hour or two in there of me getting this set up to where my father could use it as an airplane setup, but I haven't put that much time on it that way to where it'd be any sort of me needing to calculate that out. And at the end of the day, you know, these hours don't matter anyways. You know, I'm not taking these hours and then looks like over here on this other hill has a clearing. But it's not something where I'm super worried about how many hours I've put here or there. It's me, I fly around, I do more or less whatever I want to, but a lot of it I put legitimate reasons into why I'm doing it. You know, I'm practicing approaches, I'm practicing descents, I'm practicing auto rotations, I'm practicing hovering in and out of ground effect. A lot of times I'll change the weather around so that way I'm flying in less than perfect conditions, which just makes it harder. I'm going to come over here. It looks like a better landing spot if I'm on the other side of these bushes. Yeah, you know, I'm trying to make the most out of this. Yeah, you can gamify anything if you want to. There are people that gamify their weight loss apps on their Fitbits, and like, people don't do stuff unless you make it a game. But I enjoy failure because I can learn from it. If you're always doing something and succeeding, you don't know if it's by luck or because you're good. Sometimes you do know, you know, sometimes you just have the feel and it works out for you. But at the same time, if you've never done anything in an adverse situation, you don't know how good you actually are, if you can actually do this or do that, or handle a gnarly crosswind landing, whether you're doing fixed wing or having a crosswind landing, and trying to handle that in a helicopter, which really throws you off, which I'm sure it does in fixed wing too. Let's see, there's a carbon cub, it's a slow flyer. And I'm just looking here around for more people flying helicopters. CMP 472. CMP, what could that stand for? I wonder if that's a real name or if that's an airline name. Let's turn these names off again so I... Oop. That looked like somebody flying by. Maybe it was just an artifact. Okay, back to this. Traffic. Off. Apply. Go back. Let me fix my seating position real quick, guys. It's hard to fly when your butt's numb. Oop. Okay. Let's see. Off we go. Looks like we're kind of facing this way, so I'm going to pick up my right skid a little bit, add more power, and slowly take out the left lean as I'm adding power, because it would flip me over. And I was leaning forward a little bit too, since our tail was a bit downhill there. But when you are picking up off of a slope, you will lean into the slope a little bit, but then again, the more collective that you add, the more, I don't want to say adding power, but for fixed wing terms, it would be considered adding power. But the more collective I put in, if I were to leave it completely lean to the left to compensate for the hill, or completely to the right, it would end up rolling me over, and I would have a dynamic rollover if the skid were to stick on the ground. Hopefully it would just slide across the ground and you could avoid that situation. But depending on where you're at, depending on the friction between the skid and the ground, you know, you can have a dynamic rollover, and no bueno, you know. What a good little valley right here. We must be in Orange County. This seems more like rich people area here. Which with John Wayne being there, yeah, Orange County, we're close. Yeah, so you have to take a little bit of cyclic out as you're picking up off of a, I want to come on this side of the hill. Add some collective to help the turn rate. Let it off, let it drop, pick it back up and in. Beautiful. You know, if anybody has a Huey and they want to fly over my house in real life, go for it. You know, I'm never going to turn down the sound of a Huey. Just a beautiful thing with a huge rotor system, huge, thick, fat blades, which I'm curious if these are thicker than the Cobra or the Apache. I think the Apache new ones have new multi-angle blades that are supposed to be quieter. The Cobras are relatively quiet. For some reason, the Hueys just have a beautiful chop to them. But I do know that Cobras have, like, the blades are, the main rotor blades are like a foot wide. They're massive. It's not something you would expect to see spinning it. Let's see what my RPM here is. Or is this just percentage? 325 RPM, I would assume. I assume this is a times 10. Times 10 gauge there. But Orange County, California, beautiful area. A lot of money in Orange County, especially when you start finding the people that are in the hills. Those are all the people that are in the money but too smart to live in LA. If you're unfamiliar, most people who live in LA do it for the hype. Most people who live in Orange County have already been there, and they don't want to be in the middle of that shit anymore. Rightfully so. You know, a few times I've been to LA. Sure, it's a cool big city, a lot of good food and culture, if you want to call it that, but it's not the place for me. Way too many people who are not self-sufficient. You know, it's just one bad day at the supply line away from being a really bad time for millions and millions of people. Never want to live in the city for reasons like that also, you know, it's... You know, people weren't able to get food there. I'm sure there's a few people in the city who actually grow their own stuff or have a few chickens, and they actually are lucky enough to have a place with a little bit of a quarter acre or something, you know, enough to grow a couple of tomatoes and potatoes and have a couple of chickens for eggs and stuff in the backyard. But man, the thousands of people around you are going to be looking for that as soon as something shuts down. So that lack of supply chain, I don't want to say it's terrifying, but it's an irresponsible thing to an extent. And you could say, oh man, it's too big to fail. But I think that's also a very disingenuous thing to say too, because anything and everything can fail. And it's failed in the past. I think there haven't been massive civilizations before in the past. You talk about the Romans and stuff like that. You would think they would have it figured out and they wouldn't just be completely wiped off the surface of the earth, but here we are. They're not here anymore, and there's more or less nothing left of them other than a few DNA lines that made it through, and for those that got out were able to get into the other cultures. When you look at like ancient Greece with the Romans, it's just thousands and thousands of years of culture and technology that are just left in ruins because something happened. I don't know if the society was too big, or even if it was an outside force, it's, if you were able to maintain your group in society, then you should have no issue with it. But alas. Let's see, looks like we're getting closer here. I'm starting to recognize this. I'd flown this area a few months back with one of my friends who actually lives in Salt Lake City. He had attempted to do the helicopter stuff for a bit, but he's running on the controller for airplanes. And he's smart, so he understands how they work, but I think the line between knowing how it works and applying that to work with helicopter or with airplane simplified controls is a different story. So he was having some problems getting it to work the way it should. And I don't know if that's because Collective was mapped to just like an up-down button, and it wasn't something that was super dynamic, like having an actual axis that you can control. Who knows? Let's touch down this field. And when I say field, I don't mean this big one. We'll do the approach to here, but I want to touch down in this little grayer, shittier field over here. And kind of cut the approach between these buildings over this highway. Really a road, not quite highway size now, is it? We'll do the cool guy slide in, drift that bad boy in. What up? Once again, not good to go sideways, because if I were to lose control here, I would have to really jam in the pedal to get myself to turn the correct way. I'm going to check my area more and more often now that we're getting into the LA airspace, because I know there's going to be more players up in this area and a better chance for me to make a helicopter friend here or there. And I want to say there's a username like NoelDead11 or something like that. No, that's a guy I watch on. Anyway, there's somebody that I've seen in LA multiple times with flying a helicopter, but he stays just around the airport, which is ridiculously laggy. And that might just be for me because my system's not completely topped out. I mean, I'm running a 4070 Ti Super. I'm running like I think it's like an AMD 7800 X3D or 3XD XD3. I'm running something of it's a decently substantial system. I'm able to run, give or take anything. Man, I'm having to put a lot of tail rotor in there. Is that a Capri that I see down there? See. God, it's hard to tell. Let me... No, I think it's a C-172. It's all those people down there. Actually, if I sit down here and go to my menu, I should be able to look at people that are in my local area. No, if I can see their names, they're in my local area. Do a little bit of a running landing here. And come up here. I don't see any names that I recognize. Okay. General options, let's turn the traffic off. Yeah, I've got a good strong system. It runs ultra graphics when I'm not in VR, but VR takes a lot more out of it. And from what I can gather, that's because you're not just having to pre-render what's here in front of you, then off to either side by just a little bit. You're having to pre-render everything in the entire head movement, so you're kind of rendering everything that's around you, so you're having to do 3 to 4 times the work, depending on what your field of view is with just a monitor. Which, okay, I get it, you know, I can hear my fans going right now, but they're not at full rip, so I'm not stressing the system too much. I know there are things I can turn down a little bit to have better frames. You know, I can turn the detail off the building some, but there's a point, because I spend so much time low altitude. I'm rarely more than 2,500 foot above ground level, and usually the only times that I'm actually putting that much altitude into something is when I'm crossing mountains, you know, because I'm having to get up to their height or more. But even then, if you think about the top of the mountains, I'm still not super high over what their level is. But since I spend so much time actually lower to the ground, I'm okay sacrificing not being 60 to 120 frames a second to have more detail where it actually matters for me. You know, a lot of the airline pilot simmers, or the private jet simmers, or people doing longer cross-country sort of flights where you get up to 10, 15, 20, 30, 40,000 feet. You don't get the detail of all this. You're really getting the detail of the clouds, so they run the full volumetric clouds, and the interior of their cockpit. And the building detail doesn't really matter until you're 1,000 to 2,000 foot or closer to the ground, so they may lose some frames when they're coming in for a landing, but they can really not stress that much, because most of the stuff that they're watching is they're watching cockpit stuff anyways. They're making sure they're on the correct approach, making sure they're hitting all of their autopilot buttons correctly and hitting the correct waypoints, and having to enter those into different places where you would need to be. And yeah, you know, that's their thing. It's their preference to run that sort of game, but you know, that's on them. You know, I don't find any joy in hitting an altitude and then sitting still for 30 minutes and only managing radio calls, or oh, we need to go from flight level 360 to 340. You know, it doesn't really do anything for me, and no offense to anybody who is that, because I know I did post this in some discords and sent it to some friends who are actually airline pilots, and who knows who could watch this in the future also. So I'm not dogging on you guys. You have your thing, and I'm thankful for you being here, but I enjoy the challenge. That's what my mind craves. That's what my brain needs. My brain needs the constant feedback loop of having to put input into the collective, to put input into the pedals and into the cyclic to make everything work together. And it's a very fine touch. I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm barely moving this, and it puts a lot of impact in, and there's very rarely that I've actually maxed out my my inputs on this. Let's see, is that LAX? Are we finally getting up here? Long Beach, Daughtry. Yeah, we're at Long Beach. It means LAX is probably whatever's up there. That said, that also means I want to try to stick a bit more inland because I want to hit the tower. I want to I'm doing a flying simulator. I want to hit the tower. I want to land on the helipad that's at the bank tower. I'm not looking forward to hitting it, but I'd like to make a good touchdown on that. And that's going to kind of be up on the other side of this downtown hill, whatever that is. I'm not super familiar with landmarks of LA, but I am curious what this small mountain-like thing is. Los Alamitos? Which I know there's Los Alamos, which is more San Francisco area. That's what Mythbusters did for a lot of their stuff. And then use that for a lot of filming for different things, for highways for different scenes. And let's aim for midfield here. I'm going to lose some altitude also because it's feeling a bit slow being up here, even though I'm doing 115 knots. How come there's no road that goes straight there where I can follow a road? That would be nice. Let's lean over here and check out my... a little bit off to the west of my path there. But I feel like unless I'm super low, ATC would bitch at me for not crossing center field. I'll try to treat this somewhat realistically. Also curious if y'all are getting any of the screen tearing in the stream when I do that. Connection lost. Let's see if I lose you guys. I'm gonna watch the screen on my right eye. Connection back. Everything seemed to be fine on the stream. I wonder what it lost the connection to. It was just to the online server, or... yeah, this is looking much more LA here. Yep, I'm definitely in their path. Sorry, oopsie. Here. I don't see any traffic coming in that way. What is this? That has to be a golf course? A little bridge over the path there. I wonder what that would be. It's so hard to imagine this many people living in this area, and there's so many people who don't leave this area their entire life. That's wild. I know when I last came, when I last visited LA, it was a business trip, and I flew in one night and landed at midnight-ish, stayed at the hotel for a few hours, and left the hotel, went to a meeting at like 10 that morning, then went and blasted the canyons in a rental car for a few hours, and went back to the airport and flew home. But for it being midnight when I landed, you know, in Atlanta we say like Atlanta's 1 hour away from Atlanta, because especially if it's traffic time or whatever, Atlanta's a relatively small city comparatively. It can take 1 hour to get from one side to the other. Which here, it's like, cool, if traffic was not, or if traffic was moving, it would take an hour to get to the other side, if not more. LA's massive. And like, just looking at it here, like I can say that all the way past all of the stuff, it's people. It's just people everywhere. Which is unreal to imagine that many people just existing in a place. I bitched about this a few minutes ago. I'm not going to go back over that again, but if you live in LA, sorry, RIP. No, I hope nothing bad happens. There's our bank over there, I believe. Why else would that big tower be rendered in? You gonna give me a popsicle or a lollipop there where I can see what it is? Which it looks like that's where I'm heading. That's where I have the flight plan set up for. Yep, there's my helipad. Wonder how long until all the rest of the buildings start spawning in over there. I am curious how much difference it would be running a 4090 over this 4070 Ti Super. Because I saw a lot of people doing the, when the 3090 was out, running max graphics. I don't know if they ever saw VR running max graphics. But apparently the 4070 Ti Super is extremely comparable to the 3090. Which is the reason I went with this, because I know 3090s were super strong for flight sim back in the day. And I see rumors of the 5090 now coming out, and it will have its own power supply plug that goes into it, which is unreal if you're thinking about how much juice that would draw, to where they're not going to run it off a conventional power supply. Which I don't even know how much my system runs right now. It's a pretty squared away setup, but to have something where you need your own power supply, that's unreal to think about. You know, if I start getting hired for a few more jobs, you know, then sure, maybe I'll pick one up and upgrade to the even stouter AMD card, or I'll just build another PC. This wasn't too bad. It was like $2,000 on the dot to build this. It wasn't unrealistic to think of what it's capable of compared to what older computers would be capable of. Almost see buildings wanting to render in. I can see taller stuff getting closer and closer as I go. Yeah, it's also something I'm not too worried about. My purpose in building this PC and simulator to begin with was just to become proficient in flying helicopter in the simulator world, so that way I could have an easier time crossing over to the real thing when I start my my helicopter license, which I feel like I've done that. I've done 150 hours. I feel like I've hit that mark. I feel like I would be confident enough hopping in most helicopters in real life now, to, as long as I had somebody there to kind of supervise me and look over me in case I'm just overly confident for no reason. I feel like I could at least get a helicopter off the ground, hover it good enough to start moving, and then get from point A to point B. I know I'm not going to be of any capacity compared to a real pilot, but I do feel like I'm better off than majority of people getting into flying in the first place. So that's something I'd be very interested in to reaching out into and trying. And I am looking forward to actually recording that also. I don't want to tell my flight instructor when I start the real thing that I have simulator experience, because I know that's I don't want to call it a taboo, but it doesn't matter. My experience here does not matter whatsoever. But I am curious to see if I am as competent as I think I am, how well that actually transfers to the real thing, and if I'm able to actually get my license in the 40 hours that I would hope to be in, as close to the federally regulated minimum as possible. Okay, cool. Now we're starting to see the buildings render in. 7 miles still. Goodness. This helicopter's fast, but it's not 150 knots fast like I can get out of some of the, like the 222 Bravo and stuff like that. And a lot of that's not so much limited by power or the shape or the size of the helicopter. You're really limited by the rotor RPM. And I'm not saying that because you can spin the rotor faster to go faster, because you can move more air, but once you hit a certain speed, your forward movement will cancel out. Let's say you're let me get my laser pointer here. So let's say, I believe in this one, my rotor is going this way, where it's going, if you're looking down at it, it'd be going clockwise, okay? So as it's going clockwise, the side, I'll call it the driver's side here, my pilot side, the right side of the aircraft, would be going backwards. Let's just say when it's going forward, the speed of the outer blade over here is going 150 knots this way, and the speed of the blade over here is going 150 knots that way. Once you hit a certain speed, whether we'll say 150 knots, this side over here will stall, and you'll have a retreating edge blade stall. And really, that's a killer for helicopters. You go too fast, and you'll lose all the lift on one side. And I'm not a trained pilot. I can't say there's for sure a way to save that, but I'm pretty sure that's more or less a death wish for helicopters. The flying side, Bell 206 has it modeled in to where when that happens, you're dead. You know, I've tried it at higher altitudes where it could give me room to fix it, but pretty much as soon as it happens, you're upside down. And helicopters aren't meant to fly upside down. The BO 105 can do it because of the type of the rotor head that it has. I believe it's a fixed articulation rotor head. I believe, don't quote me on that. But most helicopters aren't able to do acrobatics for that reason. The rotor head's the wrong type, and it's just incapable of handling that sort of negative G's. If you look at the cyclic of the Robinson, whenever I hop in those, so I'm probably not going to fly that tonight, but if you happen to watch a stream of me doing the Robinson, it says no low G pushover. You can look at a picture of it online. It says no low G pushover, because when you do something like this, to where in an airplane it'd feel like you go weightless for a second, what it does is it takes the weight off of the way that the rotor head sits inside of the transmission and everything, and it puts stresses on it that it's not designed to handle. It's more, the helicopter is more or less designed to hang from the main rotor. And if you do something other than hanging from it, you can upset the way that it sits, the way that it's mounted, its bearings, different surfaces. You can put micro fractures in. And if you do a low G pushover, you pretty much have to send in your transmission and the rotor system for a rebuild, as far as I've understood. I'm showing connection lost, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get an out to the ground hover right here and wait until I can see everything on my stream to make sure y'all can see, because I'd hate for somebody to watch this for 4 hours or for an hour and wait for me to come over here for a landing and miss the landing. But it seems like everything's still going good on it. So let's come over here. I don't care about ATC right now, so I'm not going to go listen to ATIS and figure out where the winds are coming from. I'm just going to wing it. And when I say wing it, I mean I'm not going to wing it because it's a helicopter and I don't have wings. But we're going to touch down here. I wish there was a windsock, but I guess that would be weird also. So one thing here, I'll be going from an out-of-ground effect hover to an in-ground effect hover. And I think that is something they model, because I do notice a difference whenever I do come in here to land. I am a higher skid model, so I can't cut super close. When I say higher skid, it might be like a foot higher off the ground than what the standard Huey is. I'm going to keep my descent slower than 300 feet per minute. I'm going to set down a little bit further past the center because I know I have a long tail here. There we go. I've got an itch on my nose. Man, that was killing me. Okay, cool. Made the bank tower. F's in the chat for the haters. Let's see if there's anybody else around. What is itching my nose? Goodness, guys. Sorry if you can hear me reaching under the VR headset here. That's what's running the mic and everything. I'll put you on the forehead for a quick second. Ooh. I think it was just a mustache hair that was turned upside down. Gross. Okay, let's get a hold on the stick and everything. Cool, there we go. Looking for names. CP10. Don't know what that is. I'm going to do a little hover 360. Check around. See if I see any other helicopters. I'm getting blown a little bit, but I'll never complain about getting blown. See any other helicopters, so I don't need to go chase them. Yeah, I think I'm good. Let's turn this off again. Also, sorry if you clicked on the thumbnail and it said angry helicopter flying. I just didn't want to make a new thumbnail from yesterday's stream where I also was not angry helicopter flying. I don't even think it was really a clickbait attempt. I was just looking for something more exciting than Matt flies around and yaps for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. Okay, here we go. We're heading back off. And now I'm going to be heading more westy, kind of northy. About at this heading here. I've picked an airport kind of up in the mountains. I don't know what it was called. I don't remember, nor do I care. I was just looking for something that would use about 2/3 to 3/4 of a tank of fuel. And we'll kill some altitude here as we go. Try to level ourselves up just where the ridge line is up here. There's Los Angeles International there. I don't think airlines are this slow, so we don't need to worry about them. But yeah, good easy landing. What is that? Is that the observatory? Show me. Yeah, I'm not that interested actually. I don't care that much. Yeah, that's the observatory. Like, I'm interested, but also, I'm not. What's that bright light over there? It's gotta be somebody's landing lights or something. Speaking of landing lights, I do have a physical switch for that one, because on the Robinson the landing lights are on the vertical center part. So on the Robinson controller it comes up here, T-bar over and down, and you can have it goes over to the instructor or student. I should put this on terrain. There we go. Yeah, so whatever the center mast part on the Robinson, where it comes up the center of the T this way and then comes that way and that way, there's a landing light switch on the center of the stick there. So do have a physical switch for that. I've got a handful of buttons on my cyclic. On the actual collective, all I have is the twistable throttle for gas ones and older turbine ones that weren't run on a FADEX system. And of course the collective itself does move up and down. For the cyclic, I have frequency plus and minus and a switch button, trim and an AP off. Then there's a button on the side, and of course the trigger for talking to ATC, which I have mapped in to bring up my little inside the game menu there. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like I'm just a little to the north of the line there. But I want to play with the mountains and stuff a little bit here. Let these people who paid to have a nice quiet life up in the hills and deal with a little bit of rotor chop. Yeah, that was an airplane going into Bob Hope. I wonder how many houses in the LA and LA area, you know, whether it be, I'm sure it's more in Orange County, but I wonder how many have a dedicated helicopter landing area in their yard, especially for the richer people that live up somewhere up here in the hills. And I think more people would in Orange County also, just because they would have more property down there heading up to Malibu. I know a lot of the mountain places that have any sort of acreage up in Malibu, they'll have a helicopter landing pad, because I mean their houses to start, and the properties are $3, $4, $5 million. And if you're spending that much money in a house, obviously you're a CEO of some sort, and there could be a point in time when you say, cool, it's worth it for me to spend the $1,000 or $2,000 to contract a pilot to come pick you up. It would be worth it to save you that time, whether it's you get to spend that extra time with your wife and your kids and your family at home. Because I feel like once you move out of LA is when you're really wanting to do something family-wise. You're wanting to do something like in the city, it's you're making yourself, and then when you get out of the city, it's when you've made it. And if you can spend a little bit of extra money, if you're making enough money where that's not an issue to live out of LA but still be in the same area, I feel like it's worth it to every once in a while spend the few dollars and have a helicopter take you to LAX or into Van Nuys or whatever airport you're flying out of, just to save you that bit of time, because time is the one currency you can't get back. You don't know how much you have left. You don't, you know, you can have 20, 30 years left. You can have 2 or 3 days left, as sad as that is to say. But yeah, it's just something you never know, and I don't know what is killing me right now with this headset, but there's something tickling my nose, and I don't think it's my mustache. I want to forehead guys for a second. Oh, tilting. Okay, we'll see. My terrain thing doesn't seem that happy right there. Oh well. Good thing I have eyes, and I'm not transporting any high-profile basketball players. I will say, having the, before I had the VR headset, and I was just playing this, watching my laptop screen, to put a headset on and listen to the Huey blade chop, it was very nice. The VR headset has a decent bit of bass, but it's nothing comparatively. I'm at full collective right now. Also, the master caution, I've got no idea what it's there for. I started with this helicopter already running. I wanted to start cold and dark, but sometimes it doesn't do that. Did I start this one? No, yeah, this one I started with it already running, and I just didn't feel the need to go back and make it start cold and dark. I'm not really interested in learning the startup procedure in a Huey at the moment. It's nothing that I think is going to benefit me learning how to fly helicopters better. Although I do think there's a good chance that I will fly a Huey and actually pilot it and be a pilot in command at some point. They're relatively common for utility work, and if it's not the Huey, it's the 412, which is the four-rotor, I think twin-engine version, similar to, like, I think it's called the Venom, is the military nomenclature for it. Man, look at all these trees. Somebody needs to set these things on fire. How am I looking on my path over there? I still don't see where my airport is. I still don't remember what airport I put in to land at. But really, this is a longer trip for today. OBS connection lost thing. So yep, y'all are frozen there. And now I see y'all back. So, yeah, straight and level seems boring to me. I had a lot of people tell me like, ooh, cool, you need to practice straight and level once you get in your sim. But then when I tell them I'm doing a helicopter, they're like, oh, well, I don't know if straight and level is what you need to practice then. And I will say having it in VR is a significant improvement over doing this just looking at a flat screen for straight and level. I don't know if it's just because of the spatial awareness that I can get. Oh, yeah, and you can't tell I'm setting down in this little clearing on the mountain here. But straight and level's difficult, but it's not the difficult that I want. I'm going to set it down over here kind of more at the peak and do a name tag, gamer tag check again to see if there's any other helicopter people in the area like we've been doing all the way up the coast. Touchdown right skid first. We're leaning a little bit left downhill. Let's see. It'd be neat if I could shortcut. H4, no. It'd be neat if I could shortcut the name tag thing, which I might leave it off now since we're not pointing towards LAX anymore. I'm going to point there for right now just to take a peek. Venom. I'm putting in a lot of collective right now. My Quest 3 battery is low. I doubt that. You're plugged in. Let's hope we can make it this little stint back. I won't do any more stops then. We'll just send this thing full rip through the mountains. We're headed into Nam, and we're going to go get our boys, or get them home. This is a medevac. Yeah, it looks like we're kind of going the right way. I'll call that good. E145. It's a normal name tag. Probably Embraer. Which, cool fact, those 145s, a lot of NASCAR teams have a separate company that they own specifically for an airline. So there's like Championship Air and Victory Air and stuff like that, which are airlines that are created by NASCAR teams for NASCAR teams. And it's a lot easier and smarter for them when they're flying people out every weekend or every other weekend throughout the entire week, where you're not sending the entire team on day one out there. You might send the initial pit crew that does the setup of everything and gets everything unloaded out one day, and the driver will come out either on the big flight or in their own private setup. Actually, I wonder if I can do this real quick. I'm actually curious now. Can I see what my battery is? Why don't you show me? Weird. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense for these NASCAR teams to have 3 or 4 of these 145s to fly people from their team in and out, because a NASCAR pit crew and hospitality team and owners and friends and drivers and family and friends, it's a lot easier for them just to have an airline and fly them out multiple times over the course of the day, since there's a 3-day period or so of these people getting out to an event where they get there on Tuesday and they test for a day or two in tech and get everything fixed and ready and set up, and then the actual race on Saturday or Sunday, and then flying people back starting that night. And especially if it's something where they're flying in like Atlanta Motor Speedway, for example, since I'm an Atlanta guy, you can watch these planes go from Atlanta on flight radar, and you can track them all the way to, I forget the town in North or South Carolina, but they'll fly out there, they'll land, they'll drop off their people, and then they'll turn around and they'll come back immediately, and they'll do 2 or 3 trips in a night back and forth just to get the bulk of the crew back, because once the truck's packed up, you only need the driver there and 1 or 2 people just for the little things to do. It looks like I might have lost the stream. Let me see real quick. No, I think we're good. Now, for some reason, I've got it pulled up on my phone on the side just so I can monitor for anybody saying anything, or if something happens, check audio. And for some reason, it wasn't. It was showing like the closed screen, like the up next. Either way, I think this is our airport out straight ahead of us. I think once I see the name render in, I will be able to know. I don't know for sure right now. Zoom in. And there might be us farther over to the southwest there. Yeah, I think this is us over here. Must go faster. I'm finding a dying headset battery here, even though I'm plugged in. E75, E135. Yeah, that just sounds like a whole bunch of commuter planes. I think it either says HX or H145 or H135 if it's one of the Hype Performance Group helicopters, which I would definitely go investigate if it was. Let's see, fuel. We're getting down near our yellow there. But I did time this out where we would have used most of our fuel getting up here. If we were to have straight lined from San Diego to the helipad at the bank, we would have a good bit more fuel, but I think I added a good 20 to 25 minutes onto the flight by following the coast, doing different landings here and there, and, you know, doing something other than being a taxi. Which is good, you know. I'd much rather do that. Of course, when you're flying for somebody, you know, and you're not paying for the fuel, you fly in a straight line. Or if you're tight on your budget and you're watching your money, you fly in a straight line. I will say they did a good job with the interior of this helicopter, though. Very cool. Looks like some more hills. We'll start showing connection loss, and we're back. Looks like I got a little bit more hilly area, then it's going to flatten out up here. And one of those two lollipops there is our airport. I'm going to pause for a second, not for anything particular, it's just my butt's going numb. You know, some sim setups are better than the others. Ooh, nope, not going that way. I think a lot of people, if you were doing, let's watch our speed here. I think a lot of people who would be doing fixed wing stuff would put in some really, really big inputs there. But me catching that was more anti-torque pedal than anything, just to put that little bit of persuasion. And then I did a little bit of stick back. And even though it looks like I'm moving it a good bit here, I might be moving my fingers 2 centimeters, if that. You know, like, what I'm doing right here in real life would be maybe that much. It's super, super small and super light on the inputs with this. Which I know it's always kind of funny to me watching commercial pilots coming in for a landing and they're doing all the whoo, and it's unreal to see that it's that amount of input, but I also understand the physics of it'll take a little bit of time for an entire plane like that. And we're not going to Point Mugu, we're not going to the naval base. But yeah, so a little input takes a lot of time to move something. So me doing this right here is going to take a lot of time for it to put the input in for the helicopter. Or if I was in a commercial jet or something, or any sort of fixed wing plane, a little input takes a little bit of time. Or a little input takes a lot of time to get something done. Versus a lot of input takes a little bit of time to get something done. So it makes sense when you're fighting something that big, it's not as nimble as a helicopter. It makes sense that you'll have to put in some relatively large inputs. E545. It's a 545. Whatever it is, it's close. Just spawned in out of nowhere. Let's see what I need to do. I need to zoom in some here. I can't remember which one of these airports I have lined up. Am I going to call ATC? No. Bottom of my to-do list. They don't need to hear me. I don't need to hear them. This is a military aircraft. I am way too fast. Yeah, this one obviously does not have retreating blade stall as feature, although it might be something I could turn on, maybe? Harness a rear winch. Vortex simulation, oh, I want that. Huh. Oh well. It is something nice where it's a very sturdy, kick you in the ass reminder to not go too fast, which I feel like isn't possible in a lot of aircraft under normal flying conditions. I don't think you can overspeed a Cessna without really nosing it down and pushing into it. Just like the helicopters, you really can't overspeed it under normal straight and level flying. But once you start nosing down and get some gravity-assisted momentum, it definitely puts an effect in there. But it's nice when I'm using the fly inside one, and the few times that it's crashed me, it's been a, I don't want to say it's been a welcome thing to crash, but it's been a welcome thing to remind me to actually watch my speed and actually have to pay attention to what I'm doing, where I can't just be enjoying this VR world, and I can't just be enjoying the real world when I'm out there doing it. It's something that I do have to pay attention to, and I don't know if it's going to be an easier thing or a harder thing whenever I start flying for real to pay attention to something like that. But regardless, it's something that you do have to pay attention to. I do notice in the game, I feel like I'm going very slow a lot, partially because I'm in a helicopter. They're not exactly fast. They are limited by physics for how fast they can go because of retreating blade edge stall, or retreating edge blade stall, retreating blade edge. Either way, you are limited by actual physics of how a helicopter functions. So with that said, I would prefer all the models to have that modeled in, just because it would be a good reminder for people doing training. It takes away some of the arcade-ish sort of fun, if you want to call it that, but it'd be neat to have as an option. This is going to mark me to the parking place that I chose, so I'm definitely not going for the runway here. Yeah, it would be neat to have that option. And I don't know how well a lot of these helicopters and even the planes for that are. Speaking of, I don't know how many of them actually have anything as far as airframe damage, unless you're pulling like unrealistic G's trying to do a loop or something like that, where we still have a little bit of fuel and stuff. But I'll do a bit of a descent here. But I know, especially in the little Robinson that I probably have most of my hours on in this game, coming in and doing something like kicking the tail out like that and forcing it, like that's pushing the tail against a 70 knot wind. I don't know if the structure of the Robinson can handle that. I don't know if that's something that is modeled in. I'm sure once I start actual flight lessons I can learn that, and I'm sure maybe this just doesn't handle as well as that does. But we're here to learn. Yeah, that just has me going center, doesn't have me doing any sort of approach or anything, so we're just gonna ball his life ourselves in here and figure out where helicopters need to go and where helicopters need to go is wherever I tell them to go. Where would a Huey park at an airport like this? I'm going to sidestep myself, so heavier on the right pedal, leaning to the left a little bit. And that's keeping me straight, but while strafing me over to the left. Let's strafe a little bit more to get on the center line here. Oh cool, we did land with a headwind, that's nice. Explains why it's been such an easy landing. Or an easy approach, I technically haven't landed yet. So we're gonna pick a back corner over here and put ourselves into it. Stop our motion, do our turn, watch our shadow because we look fucking cool in a Huey. I'll bring myself back a little bit. Cool, seems like good enough to me. And we're down. There we go. Twisting our throttle down here. I don't care about cooldown. That's not my problem. Wee, 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 wee. Shut up. Turn fuel off. We don't want that. Cool, there we go. 1 hour, 48-minute flight. Back to menu. Oh, there's somebody flying there at the last second. Dude, I can see it watching the replay on my phone. There was a jet landing. Yeah, sorry about that, whoever it was. If it was somebody following around. Yeah, this is the airport I landed at, Camarillo. Oh, don't see any players. Cool. Anyways, that was fun, guys. If you watched all the way through or you dropped in at any point, I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again soon because I plan on doing 2024 Simulator. And it will be doing the entire thing.